She entered the ballroom to clean up someone else's fairy tale. 30 minutes later, she was part of it, spinning across the marble floor with the groom, the chandeliers reflecting a dream she thought she'd lost forever. They thought she was just the help, until the music started. The ballroom was nearly empty, save for the scent of roses and champagne that still clung to the air like perfume on silk. Echoes of laughter and clinking glasses had faded into the marble, leaving behind silence broken only by the squeak of a mop. Jasmine Howell moved like a shadow across the floor, quiet and deliberate, her worn sneakers barely making a sound against the gleam of imported tile. In her gloved hands, the mop danced, catching droplets of spilled wine and invisible traces of joy. Someone else's joy. Always someone else's. At 30, Jasmine didn't look old, but her knees said otherwise. Her spine whispered reminders, and deep inside, there was a tired ache, the kind that doesn't come from labor, but from a dream packed away in a shoebox years ago. She paused, straightened up slowly, and looked around the grand hall. The chandeliers above still glittered like stars, indifferent to who watched from below. A string quartet had played here just an hour ago, for a wedding rehearsal so luxurious it could have been broadcast live. Guests wore diamonds. Waiters wore white gloves. Jasmine wore bleach stains on her sleeves and silence on her face. No one knew who she used to be. No one cared. Once upon a time, she had danced under lights brighter than these, on her toes, in pink silk shoes, wrapped in applause. Harlem Ballet Theater, Giselle, Swan Lake. Her body remembered every movement, every breath held, every toe pointed, every ovation that made her believe in magic. Until the day her back gave out in Chicago. One second she was leaping, and the next, she was falling, along with everything she'd worked for. And now? Now she scrubbed away champagne footprints for billionaires who'd never know her name. She dipped the mop again. The water in the bucket swirled with dirt and gold glitter from the decorations. That was the thing about being invisible. No one noticed if your hands bled or your dreams shattered. As long as the marble gleamed, they smiled. "Hey!" The voice cracked the silence. Jasmine flinched. Across the room, still in his tux shirt and undone vest, stood a man. Tousled hair, barefoot, slightly breathless. The groom. Zachary Garrison. Yes, that Garrison. Son of hotel magnates, heir to half of Midtown's skyline. She'd seen him earlier posing with his bride. Perfect teeth, perfect hair, the kind of glow that came with old money and curated diets. Jasmine quickly looked down, assuming he was about to tell her she missed a spot. But he didn't leave. He came closer. "I saw you," he said, quieter now, almost in a whisper. "You were moving, just now, to the music." Jasmine blinked. "Excuse me?" "When the last staff left, you thought no one was watching. But I was. You moved like it wasn't cleaning, but performing." She stood still. Her mop stood still. "I'm probably insane," he added, laughing nervously. "But I need help. Tomorrow's the first dance. I've been dreading it for weeks. It's supposed to be a waltz, but I've got 2 left knees and no rhythm. And tonight, seeing you, I thought, maybe you could show me?" Jasmine stared. Her body tensed like it always did when someone crossed the invisible boundary between the help and the guests. I'm just cleaning," she said. He gave a half smile. "But you weren't. You were dancing." Something in her chest clenched. Years of muscle memory surged forward. Her back still ached, but the music inside her never stopped playing. She hadn't been on a real stage in 8 years, but even a bucket couldn't erase her posture. Even bleach fumes couldn't silence rhythm. Zach waited. His hand scratched the back of his neck, uncertain. And then, Jasmine took a slow breath, slid the mop to the side, pulled off her gloves. "Okay," she said. He lit up. "Really?" "One lesson," she warned. "Deal." They pushed the chairs aside together. The ballroom was theirs now, silent and still, like a private rehearsal space. The chandeliers watched. She walked to the center, then turned to face him. Her body, despite years of wear, aligned into form. Her shoulders lifted, chin up, spine firm. "Start here," she instructed. "Left foot forward. 1, 2, 3. Waltz timing. Feel the floor, not just your feet." Zach mirrored her movements, awkwardly, nervously. "Like this?" "No." She chuckled softly. "You're leading with your head, not your heart. Try again." They moved slowly. Jasmine corrected his posture, guided his arms. He stumbled. She caught him. He cursed under his breath. She reassured him. And for the first time in a long while, she felt present. He looked at her differently now, not as the woman with the mop, but as someone who knew something rare, something elegant. "You're not just a cleaning lady, are you?" he asked suddenly. Jasmine froze. "No," she said softly. "Not always." And because it had to be said, she added, "I was with Harlem Ballet Theater. Then I fell. Bad back. Insurance didn't cover enough. Life changed." He didn't say anything right away, but he didn't pity her either. His gaze was level, curious, real. "You saved me," he said quietly, stepping back from a clumsy twirl. "I mean it. I've been terrified of tomorrow. I feel like a fraud in this whole perfect wedding thing. But when I move with you, it feels honest. It feels mine." She swallowed hard. 30 minutes later, the ballroom lights dimmed automatically for the night, and Jasmine knew this was supposed to be the end, a moment, a fluke. But then, Zach took her hand, his palm warm against hers. "Tomorrow," he said, "I want you to be there." She pulled back instinctively. "I'll be working." "No," he said firmly. "Not as staff, as part of it, as part of me." She turned away. He couldn't know what those words did to her, how many nights she'd laid in bed aching, not from labor, but from longing, to matter, to be seen, to dance again. For real. The ballroom held its breath. "I'll think about it," she whispered, picking up her gloves. But her heart had already answered, and the mop, forgotten, leaned against the wall, next to a bucket that, just minutes earlier, had seemed like her whole world. He thought she was here to clean his mess. Turns out, she was here to clean his fear, and maybe, just maybe, remind him how to move through the world without pretending. The morning of the wedding rehearsal had been chaos. Zach had woken up in silk sheets, in a hotel suite bigger than most New Yorkers' apartments. But he didn't feel like the prince everyone expected him to be. He felt like a fraud, an imposter in his own tux. He had tried, really tried, to rehearse the waltz. But every time his fiancée looked at him with that tight, practiced smile, the kind of smile that knew exactly how to pose for press photos, he felt like he was suffocating in his own suit. That night, It wasn't the expensive scotch or the loud groomsmen that brought him back to the ballroom. It was the silence. And something else. Something about her. Now, as Jasmine guided his left foot across the polished parquet, her voice was low, calm, almost hypnotic. Left foot forward. 1, 2, 3. Let your weight follow your breath. He tried again, slower this time. She watched him, her brow furrowed, not in judgment but in correction, the way only a real teacher does. You're leading too hard with your shoulder, she said, gently touching it. Relax it. Let your center guide the rest. He blinked. My center? She half smiled. You have one, I promise. They both laughed, and for a second, the tension broke. The chandeliers above glittered like they were listening. Zach moved again, smoother now, still clumsy but not hopeless. Jasmine nodded, impressed despite herself. You're not a lost cause, she muttered. I'll take that as a win, he said, breathing harder now. God, I feel like I'm learning to walk. She paused. The metaphor hit too close. That's exactly what it is, she said. My dance is walking with purpose. The words slipped out before she could filter them. A fragment from her old life, her old lectures, her old self. Zach stopped moving. You used to teach too? She hesitated, then nodded. When I wasn't performing, yeah. After-school programs, outreach classes. Ballet isn't just for the privileged. I believed that. What happened? She looked away. Life, bills, pain. The kind that doesn't get a standing ovation. He didn't push, didn't prod. Just watched her like someone seeing a hidden painting for the first time, unveiled from dust. Do you miss it? He asked. She looked down at her shoes. Every time I walk. Silence stretched between them. But it wasn't awkward. It was respectful. A quiet shared by people who know what it's like to lose something they loved. I gotta say, Zach finally said, you've got better timing than any dance instructor I've ever had. You've had others? 5. One made me cry. One tried to sue me. She snorted. Sounds about right. They circled again. Slower this time. He let her lead. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that was when it happened. He looked at her, really looked, and said, You saved me tonight. She laughed, but there was a tremble in it. From what? From myself, he said, simply. From standing in front of 200 people tomorrow and pretending to be someone I'm not. Jasmine swallowed. Her hands were still on his shoulders. He hadn't let go yet. I've been so wrapped up in this whole perfect wedding narrative. But you're the first honest moment I've had all week. He took a step back, but not far. His eyes didn't waver. I don't want to do that first dance unless you're there. Not on the sidelines, not in uniform. She stared at him, heart caught in her throat. This isn't some pretty woman fantasy, she said, almost bitterly. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. I'm not offering this out of pity, he said, firm. I'm asking because you made me feel like I belong on that floor. And then, with a voice barely above a whisper, he said the one thing that undid her completely. You move like the truth. Her throat tightened. No one had said that to her. Not in years. Maybe not ever. Not like that. 30 more minutes passed. Somewhere in the distance, the city roared and sparkled and moved without them. But in the ballroom, there were only 2 people. A cleaning woman with fire in her spine, and a billionaire's son trying to learn how to stand. When they finally stopped, the lights flickered. Night was bleeding into early morning. Jasmine turned to retrieve her gloves, her mop, her mask of invisibility. But Zach caught her hand before she could. "I know you'll probably say no," he murmured, "but if there's any chance, any at all, that you might want to dance with me tomorrow, I'd be honored." She didn't answer. Couldn't, because inside her, something cracked. The wall she'd built between her past and her present. And behind it, something stirred. Something that sounded a lot like hope. They expected a bride in white. Instead, they witnessed a woman who rose from the shadows and made the whole room believe in magic again. The groom reached out not to tradition, but to truth. And when they danced, the world stood still. It started like every luxury wedding in Manhattan did, with opulence so polished it almost hurt to look at. The Grand Marquis Hotel ballroom glowed. Crystal chandeliers burned bright against gold-trimmed ceilings. Rows of orchids poured from vases taller than a grown man. Waiters in black tuxedos floated like ghosts, offering champagne before guests could even ask. And in the middle of it all stood Zachary Garrison. Perfect posture, tailored suit, nervous hands. Everyone was watching him. The photographers, the socialites, the distant relatives flown in from Monaco. They were waiting for a moment. The moment. The first dance. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced the DJ, his voice crisp, rehearsed. "Please welcome the newlyweds, Mr. and Mrs. Zachary Garrison, to the floor for their first dance as husband and wife." Applause erupted. The bride, dressed in custom Elie Saab, stepped forward. Her smile was fixed, ready for the flashbulbs. But Zach didn't move toward her. Instead, he turned, toward the side of the ballroom, toward the shadows, and extended his hand. A ripple ran through the crowd, like wind through tall grass. Gasps, murmurs. Because the woman who stepped into the light wasn't in designer silk. She wore a simple black dress, not floor length, not couture, modest, soft. It was Jasmine, hair pulled back, no glitter, no fanfare, just strength, the kind that doesn't need sequins to shine. The bride's mouth parted, her eyes narrowed. The cameras pivoted, confused, but Zach only smiled and spoke into the microphone like no one else was there. "Tonight, I want to dance with the person who reminded me who I am, who reminded me that this isn't about performance. It's about presence, about truth." He looked at Jasmine, and his voice lowered. "This woman taught me to move, taught me to listen, taught me to feel the ground again. You didn't see her, but I did." He offered his hand again, this time not as a formality, but as a promise. A few feet away, the bride froze. She didn't speak, didn't scream, because the room, all 400 guests, had already turned, not to her, but to the story that was unfolding before them. The string quartet hesitated. Then, as if some invisible cue struck, they began to play. Soft, slow, waltz time. And Jasmine stepped forward. Not as staff, not as background, but as someone who deserved to be seen. The first step was the hardest, not because her knees hurt, though they did. Not because the chandelier lights were blinding, though they were. It was hard because for the first time in years, she wasn't disappearing. She was becoming. Zach placed a hand gently on her back, just as she'd taught him. She nodded once, imperceptibly. And then they moved. Not like trained dancers, not like royalty, but like two people who knew what it meant to fall and to rise again. Gasps became silence. Silence became awe. Because what they were witnessing wasn't just a dance, it was a resurrection. Each step they took was heavy with unspoken history. Hers, buried in point shoes and hospital bills. His, hidden beneath headlines and inheritance. And when she twirled, slow, deliberate, her skirt catching the air, even the waitstaff paused mid-service to watch. Phones came out. Recordings started. But Jasmine wasn't dancing for Instagram. She was dancing for the girl she used to be. The girl who'd spun barefoot in kitchens. The one who'd stood on a stage with bleeding toes and a full heart. The woman who thought she'd lost her art and found it again with a mop in her hands and a broken man in front of her. Zach whispered as they moved, "You're doing it again." She looked up. "What?" "Making me believe this isn't a performance, that this is real." She didn't answer. She didn't need to, because the ballroom wasn't breathing. It was watching. When the final note of the waltz landed, Jasmine stepped back. Zach let go slowly. The lights dimmed just enough to make everything feel suspended in amber. Then came the applause. Not polite clapping, real applause. From stunned guests, from staff in the wings, from strangers who saw something rare. Authenticity in a room built on appearances. But Jasmine didn't bow. She turned to leave, already retreating toward the quiet edges of the hall, until Zach's voice rang out again. "Wait." She stopped. He crossed to the mic. "There won't be a banquet," he said. Gasps. The wedding planner blanched. The bride, still silent, stood rigid with disbelief. Zach cleared his throat. "I've made a decision. The money set aside for tonight's reception. The food, the music, the ice sculpture my father insisted on. I'm donating it." More gasps. "To a new scholarship fund. For inner-city ballet schools, in honor of Jasmine Howell." Jasmine's knees nearly gave out. She covered her mouth. Her eyes burned. "And if anyone's uncomfortable with that," Zach added, "I understand. But I won't apologize for choosing meaning over show." Counters. Then thunderous applause again. Not out of politeness. Out of something deeper. People didn't quite understand what they saw, but they felt it. The bride left quietly. Some guests followed, but most stayed, watching Jasmine, not as the woman with gloves and a mop, but as the woman who danced with gravity and turned a wedding into a story they'd tell for years. The New York Times ran the photo on the front page, a still frame of Jasmine and Zach mid-waltz, her eyes closed, his hand steady. The headline read, "Black cleaning lady stuns high society. Her dance changed everything." Below it, the story went viral. She received messages from former colleagues, old ballet students, strangers, one offer from a foundation, another from a documentary filmmaker. The Harlem Ballet Theater invited her to speak, not perform, just speak, tell her story, be seen. But when asked in interviews what the moment really meant to her, Jasmine said only this: "I thought I had nothing left but a mop. Turns out I was just waiting for the music to come back."